Cavalier made a winning return from Messi Mania, Molynes showed signs of life, and there was a buzzer beater down in Tivoli. But we start one place and one place only, and that's at Catherine Hall, where the battle for second was fierce. This is Match Week 30 review show. Yes, people, welcome back to JPL Fan. The JPL train keeps trucking along without any stops, and thus we got 6 games to review for you guys. Starting as promised with a top 3 clash as Mobay welcome Arnett Guns. We begin with the home side starting 11. Arnett returns in goal, so too their number 1 striker Chanel Thomas, but both Tribenham and Hospitales are away with the Trinidad national team for international duty. As for the junglers, they only made one change as Warner Brown is off with the Reggae Boys, meaning informed attacker Shea Smith comes in. Now, at the kickoff, the home team started on the front foot, causing 1 and 2 scares for Arnett's back line. But eventually, Arnett settled down and had Smith getting the game's first shot on target with a close-range header. Mobay would respond with a close-range header of the Vere own from Rankin before Arnett would go up the other end, cause some chaos in the box before Fabian Reid trying to chip Inel, who backtracked just in time. Reid was searching for his 100th goal of his career on that occasion, but didn't have to wait much longer as from a quickly taken corner, the ball was swung into the box and found a completely free Parker Blacks as the Mobay defenders were caught napping, and the legendary striker did a glancing header to get it past Inel for the 1-0 lead. Amazing stuff from the striker, and with now 100 goals to his name, he has cemented his place in the JPL Hall of Fame. Mobay were in no mood to crown him king just yet as they felt that the goal came against the run of play, and they had a spirited Chanel Thomas trying his best to get them back in the match, starting with this header. The 12-goal striker kept on going, pushing himself to find the target, and he and Weatherly would team up again moments later, and he would produce this swivel shot, but Tyrone Williams was equal to the task. Mobay's attack at this point was relentless, and it was Lima's turn to cause some trouble before he caused an even bigger scare with his header that crashed off the crossbar, and I'm still in awe on how they'd never scored from Thomas' follow-up. Before finally they got their equalizer, a corner was hit into the near post and Rankin met it well and thumped his header into the back of the net. 1-1 and fully deserved for Mobay after all those close calls. In fact, they were getting greedy as they wanted another before the break, but the splendid shot from Thomas was stopped by a splendid save from Williams. But Mobay and their home fans will be left stunned moments after that. A simple ball was played into the box and Inel should have easily gathered, but he somehow spilled it. Reid acted quickly and played it off to Smith, who slotted home for yet another lead against the run-up play. Inel was having butterfingers all night long, but it was still an unexpected error from the Trinidadian international. That was the last main action of the first half. Second half now, and Arnett came out with a different mindset, opting to invite pressure and looking for counters. It worked for the most part as the first part of the second half, Mobay hardly had a sniff at goal. But Arnett was conceding a lot of corners, and on the 11th one of the night, Mobay got their second. The ball was swung in from the right hand side. Brito did well to get a good header towards goal. Williams made a great save, but Lima was on hand to smash home the rebound. 2-2 and Catherine Hall erupted. Surprisingly, Arnett weren't okay with just a point and went looking for a winner, opening up the match again and seeing both teams coming closer on their attacking plays. It was the simply breathless end-to-end stuff, and on this occasion, Smith really should have put the junglers back in front. There was one lengthy pause in the game, and it was an unfortunate one. Mobay was once again away on the counter via Thomas, but he was stopped in his tracks by Dwyer. Now, while aggressive, we never expected the tackle would force Thomas out of the game, and he had to be substituted due to a shoulder injury. When the game resumed, Arnett was gifted one last big chance for the winner from yet another Inel error, only this time from his feet, but there would be no winner in this wildly entertaining encounter. So a brilliant game, but how was the game in terms of stats? Well, as you can see from the highlights, there were a lot of shots from both teams, and they both had an equal amount on target. Mobay shared the possession 52-48, but look at the corner count. Mobay had 14 to Arnett's 4. and made use of it all in the end. So first of all, I just have to say wow, what a great game that was. Both teams went for it and both teams made costly errors that robbed them of all 3 points. I am sure Arnett would have taken the draw before the start of the game, but maybe felt they deserved more at the end. While the same could be said about Mobay, who welcomed back Brian Brown from injury but may now lose Shandil Thomas in these final weeks leading up to playoff. Anyway, once again it finishes Montego United 2, Arnett 2. We move from the battle for the top 2 to West Kingston, where the battle for top 6 continued. We start with the starting lineup for Tivoli Gardens, only 2 changes from coach Jerome Waite, as Danville Watson and Kimberly Smith were replaced by Alton Lewis and Nicaelia Fuller in the team. As for Waterhouse, well, veteran Elvis Wilson returns to the defense. Dylan John was rested in favor of Leonardo Jefferson on the left, and birthday boy Nicholas Hamilton would lead the attack. Now, at the start of this game, it was a physical affair with both teams cancelling each other out, but more and more the half progressed, more and more Waterhouse started to look dangerous, especially down the left. So perhaps it was no surprise that they would take the lead from a ball that came from the left. Some good work by Jefferson to head to the byline before crossing and finding a completely free Hamilton at the top of the 6-yard box, who made no mistake and gave Firehouse Nation the lead in West Kingston. It took some time after this goal, but Tivoli finally came to the party and started to have more sightings on goal. They kept at it until some fancy feet brought them the breakthrough. Lennox Russell got the ball here on the left hand side, squared up his defender, gave him a shimmy and a shook before cutting back a pass to the penalty box for Shaquille Jones, who still had some work to do to slot it home for the team's equalizer. Tivoli were definitely feeling the vibes now and was now pushing for the go-ahead goal before the halftime break, but Waterhouse would eventually hold out. Second half now, and Tivoli were still in the ascendancy, creating some dangers in the final third, particularly off set pieces. They produced a huge chance from one of those set pieces when Alton Lewis managed to steer his header on target, but Akeem Bernard did well to keep the ball out of his net. But Tivoli was still spirited and kept coming, leading you to believe they will definitely be the ones to score next. But football at times does have a twisted sense of humor, as a free kick was given to Waterhouse just outside the box, which of course is Andre Fletcher territory. He stepped up and whipped a nice curling effort over the wall, drawing Harden into making a decent stop. But the ball was still in play and he found Elvis Wilson, who did well to hold it up and get his shot off, scoring in the 77th minute. And just like that, it was 2-1 against a runner play. But Waterhouse was celebrating a little too much, it seems, as literally 2 minutes later, Tivoli sprayed the ball out wide on the right. A misguided header gave Clark the freedom to head to the byline and put in a good cross in the box, finding Nelson to chest/head it home to give them the equalizer. 2-2, and Waterhouse joy quickly turned to sorrow. But at least at this moment, they still had a point away in a tough venue and just had to hang on as Tivoli tried their best to find a winner. And just when Waterhouse thought they were going to make it, Lennox Russell striked. A wicked bounce and a weak clearance from Waterhouse freed Tivoli in the box before another pinpoint low cross was played to the back post for the waiting Russell to tap it home. 3-2, and I don't have to explain how that goal was celebrated by the home fans. Waterhouse had no time to respond as the referee would call time soon thereafter, and Tivoli won this back and forth encounter 3-2. So amazing game, but how was it in terms of stats? No surprise, Tivoli had more possession with 59%, and no surprise they lead in the shots category with 13. They also had 7 of those on target, while Waterhouse only had 3 of those on target. Tivoli had 75 dangerous attacks, while Waterhouse only had 58. 6 corners to the home team and 2 corners to the visitors. Okay, let's begin with Tivoli. Well, their great form at the Edward Siaga complex continues since their return, and after being there myself for the first time this season, it's easy to see why, as the fans really feels this great club. Will it be enough to power them into the top 6? We will see. As for passionate fans, I can't imagine how Firehouse Nation is feeling right now. Again, not exactly a horrible performance, but schoolboy errors continue to plague them. They have to get it right and get it right quickly as games are running out. But anyway, for the final time, it's Tivoli Gardens 3, Waterhouse 2. One team that doesn't have to worry about the top 6 race is Portmore United, and we check in with them next as they hosted Vere United. In terms of Portmore starting lineup, both Smart and Peck are back in. Guthrie still nursing a knock, so he starts from the bench, and Jeremy Lynch once again leads the attack. As for Vere, it's practically an unchanged 11 from the team that defeated Humble Lion, meaning Tyreek McGee starts before heading off on international duty. Well, just like last match, it was a decent start by Vere, even getting off the first shot on target, but Portmore quickly grew into the game and started to pressure the Vere back line, especially down the left. But they still weren't troubling their goal until finally Lynch doing well to get on the end of this cross and get a powerful header on target, but Harrison did well to save it. That would prove to be the catalyst for the opening goal as Forbes gambled and stepped from his line, leaving a huge gap in behind for Shandy James to run into the box and with the angle closing to get off a shot that was parried, but Javier Brown did well to follow up the play and tap it home. 1-0 to Portmore, and with their defense, it was now a tough task for Vere to get back into the game. Portmore's attack and dominance never relent, however, as they continue to create some half chances to extend their lead. But despite their best efforts, the game remained 1-0 at the break. Second half now, and not much change in terms of the pattern of the game as Portmore created even more chances but never got any of them into the back of the net. At this point, Vere offered very little going forward until a busting run from the back by Michael Forbes led to this great strike and then a great save from Benjamin Williams. But amazingly, chances after chances kept flowing for Portmore, each better than the previous one, but they still could not kill off Vere for good. And Vere almost made him pay with this quick counter that eventually led to Rabina Gordon pulling his header just wide. But it was a stark reminder to Portmore that the game was not won yet. Well, they thought they had their best opportunity to do just that right here, but Forbes intervened and drew the foul. Now, the new rules surrounding the last man and the red card has changed recently, stating if a genuine attempt for the ball was made, it's a yellow card. But I felt the refs made a right choice here and Forbes was ejected from the match. Emilia Russell would take the free kick, but again, the ball just refused to go into the back of the net. To their credit, Vere was still fighting and created some decent half chances at the opposite end. But so did Portmore, who still could not find that elusive second. But in the end, one will be enough as Portmore's stellar defense led them to another 3 points. So via the eye test, Portmore dominated, but is that reflected in the stats? Well, unfortunately, we got no stats for this game, but I would argue that Portmore dominated possession, total shots, and maybe it was more equal in shots on target as Portmore were a bit wasteful in front of goal. Alright, let's begin with the home team. I'm encouraged that they are creating more chances and seem to have more cutting edge in attack, but this sport is all about getting the ball into the back of the net, and they're still lacking there, so they have more work to do. As for Vere, well, they weren't blown away, so that's a positive, but relegation is increasingly becoming a reality if these results continue. They will need a total team effort from here on out to give themselves the best chance for survival. Anyway, once again it finishes Portmore 1, Vere United 0. So Vere aren't the only struggling Clarendon club, of course, as the Jungle would host a huge 6-pointer between Molynes Utd and Chapelton Maroons. In terms of the starting lineup for Molynes, Umar McLaughlin was back on the bench, so too was Peter McGregor, but it was great to see the impressive youngster Devon Davis back from injury. As for the visitors, it seemed coach Vassal Reynolds was going for all-out attack as Deacon, Williams, Ellis and Cohen all start from the get-go. So it was a fairly even start by both teams, but Molynes' Jason Wright would produce the first big chance with this effort right here, but Prince Daniel Smith did well to not concede early. Then it was the Juma Johnson and Demar Deacon show as Chapelton created numerous chances with those two heavily involved. Levon Williams was also heavily involved, but he lacked ruthlessness in front of goal, and Molynes would eventually have a pocket of retaliation, but between Pennycook and Murray, they could not find the target. Moments after that, Pennycook would find the target on this occasion, but his effort was too weak to trouble Smith in goal. The Maroons would eventually regroup and Chu Johnson once again produced a big chance for Ellis, but his effort went over the bar. No, remember Deacon? Just look at this mazy run and beautiful pass for Dustin Cohen, who didn't do the assist justice and finished off the play. But Chapelton were definitely knocking at the door. Then right before the break, there would be one more chance for the Maroons as Deacon decided to go it alone, but his shot was simply too high. So 0-0 at the break. Second half now, and things returned to equilibrium as both teams had spells of possession without troubling either's goal. But that all changed in the 73rd minute, DeAndre Cunningham with the spectacular curler to give Chapelton Maroons the lead. I had no idea the former Arnett man had this in his locker, but it's definitely a goal of the month contender. Reynolds responded with 2 subs, and both of those subs would go on and combine right here to set up fellow substitute Peter McGregor to bundle the ball over the line to bring parity back to the game. Molynes were second best this half, but that may prove to be a pivotal goal in their season at the end, 1-1. And that will be the last minute action of the game as the points were shared. So it was a draw that either team would have wanted, but how was the game in terms of stats? Well, Chapelton had more total shots with 13 compared to Molynes 8. Chapelton had 6 on target while Molynes managed only 5, and there were 11 fouls apiece. And to round things off, the Maroons had more of the ball with 52%. Okay, let's start with Molynes. Things were looking a bit dicey there for a moment until McGregor's rescue act, which should do wonders for his confidence. But Molynes almost seem like they're in cruise control as if they're already safe. I think they need to up their effort a little bit more. As for the Maroons, what a big opportunity missed to get a much needed 3 points. I like the ambitious approach by Reynolds, but I am starting to think there is simply not enough goals in the squad to keep them in the league. We will see, but for now it finishes Molynes United 1, Chapelton Maroons 1. We remain in the jungle as Cavalier, fresh off from facing Messi, will now have to contend with Dunbeholden. In terms of the lineup for the Caribbean champs, Demani Miller gets a rare run out, so too O'Neal Bryan, and for the first time the starting trio is Dunn, Aubrey and Richters as Calvin was rested. As for Dunbeholden, Jamal Vassell kept his spot in goal, Orlando Brown makes a return to the squad, and Nakil Wright was also recalled to the starting 11. Now, I'm not sure if there were lingering effects from playing Miami on Thursday, but Cavalier started the game a bit slow as Dunbeholden controlled more of the ball. Cavalier though eventually grew into the game and had a small look at goal via Justin Dunn before excellent defensive work from McCleary denying Merrick at the other end. Now, Justin Dunn will get another huge chance thanks to this brilliant find by Richters, but Vassell did well to repel the attack. And that would be all actually for the first half. Second half, Cavalier came up with much more hunger and desire to get a result and had a few looks at the target. Up to this point, Richters was having himself a game and did well right here to pick out Atkinson, but Busy did fail to make much of it. But a wonderful team build-up would lead to the game's first goal. Sad Milan started it all, Busy moved it on to Watson, who played it back to Busy, who then picked up Aubrey down the right with a well-measured pass, and the Trinidadian took the shot that was well saved, but Atkinson was in the right spot to mop up the rebound. 1-0, and Cavalier's hard work in the second half finally paid off. In fact, they should have had their second not long after that via this effort right here by Busy, before Richters found himself one-on-one with the keeper, but strangely decided to pass it. We also had a slight controversial moment with Richters once again seemed favored for another one-on-one with the keeper, but he was brought down by Watkins as the last man. But he only received a yellow card. Now, after all of this, Dunbeholden woke up out of their second half slumber and finally started to show some desire to get a goal. But it came a little too late as the game would end with another 3 points for Cavalier. So the game wasn't quite as hyped like the one on Thursday, but how was the game in terms of stats? There weren't much shooting by either team as Cavalier only made 8 attempts, while Dunbeholden was even worse with 3. 4 on target for Cavalier, and only 1 on target for Dunbeholden. Cavalier also had more possession with 55% compared to Dunbeholden's 45%. Alright, let's start with Dunbeholden here. I just stated not too long ago that Molynes were playing as if their job for the season was already achieved, and the same could be said about Dunbeholden. The only difference here is that it is merited, as there is no chance for them to get to the top 6 nor get relegated. As for Cavalier, it's not easy coming from such a high to come back to the realities of the JPL, but they eventually manage it well and professionally. We may now see their best in the coming weeks. But for today, it ended once again, Cavalier 1, Dunbeholden 0. Now onto our final game, as another relegation 6-pointer as Humble Lion hosted Harbour. Here's the home side's lineup. There was a change in goal again as Glenroy Samuels comes back in, and there were also a rare starts for Giovanni Bailey and Fabian Pasco. As for the stars of the East, Andre Fagan is the big switch up front, replacing Colorado Murray, and Akima Jones replaced Talbot at the back. No, it was a physical and even start by both teams, but I would say that Humble Lion settled down a bit quicker. But Harbour would have their moments in the sun as well and held possession for a decent spell of time with 1 or 2 scary moments for the Lions back line. But honestly, it wasn't much happening on either end, as majority of the half was back down in midfield. That all changed in the 45th minute when a flat square was drilled into the box. The Harbour defender opted to chest it instead of heading it out, and Afiba Chambers pounced on it with a good volley that beat Bennett and into the lower corner. 1-0, and it came at the right time. Second half, Harbour kept the ball well and were eager to find the equalizer. They never found any real clear-cut opportunities though, but effort was definitely there. To Humble Lion's credit, they defended well and had a few looks of their own via the counter, while as the game went on, most of Harbour threats were coming from set pieces. They dominated the shots counter in the half, but most of them were wayward or too straight to Samuels in goal, and then in the end, that equalizer eluded them and Humble Lion picked up a crucial point at home. So a big win for the Lions, but how was the game turned to stats? Well, the Lions held more possession with 57%, but Harbour greatly outshot them 16-4. 1 was on target for the home team and 5 was on target for the visitors, 35 dangerous attacks for the Lions and 65 dangerous attacks for the Stars of the East. Okay, let's begin with the Humble Lion. This win is exactly what the doctor ordered after that big loss to rivals Vere. They are clearly better at home, but they need the road results as well to stay in the league. As for Harbour, well, the same problem, as at the compound they are almost unstoppable, but on the road they can't seem to buy a win. And that's not to say they played poorly today, but these 1-0 losses on their travels is starting to wrap up. Anyway, once again it finishes Humble Lion 1, Harbour 0. So yeah, that is match week 30 done and dusted. As you can see, we had some great games and not so good ones. But let's quickly look at the table. Unfortunately, Mount Pleasant was idle due to their game with Racing being postponed, so they remain on 68 points in first, but their lead is now cut to 5 as Arnett now has 62 points. Montego Bay is not far behind in third with 60 points. Portmore are now in fourth with 50 points. Cavalier are in 5th with 48 points, and then there's a small drop off to Racing in 6th with 41 points. But Tivoli has leapfrogged Waterhouse into 7th on 39 points. Waterhouse slide all the way to 8th with 38 points. Dunbeholden ain't going anywhere with 32 points in 9th. Harbour not quite safe 8th with 28 points from their 30 games. And Molynes Utd also not quite safe with 28 points from their 30 games. Humble Lion are this week big jumpers though. They jumped from last all the way up to 12th with 24 points, while Chapelton Maroons are now in the relegation zone with 23 points from 30 games. And poor Vere are at the basement of the table with 22 points. And can you believe it, there's games this midweek again, so here's a quick rundown what's coming on Wednesday and Thursday. Dunbeholden will host Tivoli Gardens, Harbour will host Portmore United, Waterhouse in a big clash with Vere Phoenix United, Chapelton also in a big clash with the Humble Lion, Montego Bay United will host Molynes Utd, and Mount Pleasant game with Cavalier should be called off. But anyway, that's all I got here on Match Week 30 Review Show. Thank you all for watching, And can you please like, subscribe and share as we look to keep you all up to date on everything in the JPL leading up to the final in May. Otherwise, for great JPL content, you're already at the right place, JPL Fan. YouTube, pick up yourself.